Well, those are the headlines that we are tracking for you all evening on ET Now. But as we face a pandemic, we face a crisis in the markets of sorts, but we've recovered as well very smartly from that. It makes you wonder, what exactly should your playbook for investing and savings be? There's so much movement, so much volatility in the market. It's very difficult to time it, to predict it. So how can you invest your money? Well, we'll get you a guidebook of all of that. We have with us Atul Shinghal. He's the founder and CEO of Scripbox. Atul, really appreciate you joining us today on The Money Show. Thanks so much for taking out time. Atul, to start with, it's a very confusing market, really. When the retail investor looks at the market and says, I would really like to invest because the market as well has rallied so much, it can be very confusing on where to start and where to end. But let's start off first with the basic question on savings. I think at this juncture, everyone has realized on why saving money is extremely crucial, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to, come up with. What new surprise will you be thrown at and, faced with? So how would you guide individuals to kickstart their saving and consequently investment journey?
Well, thank you so much for having us on the show, Mubina. It's our pleasure entirely. So let's start with the basics, and I apologize if it's too basic. The difference between saving, investing, and investing with a purpose. We believe the real outcome is what people should be doing is investing with a purpose. You start with saving, and saving is compulsory because it gives you a better life in the future, helps you to overcome things like inflation, prepare for an emergency, prepare for your children's education, retire happier. So saving is absolutely essential for better outcomes in life. Right? All of us have life goals. Now India has got more nuclear families. So taking all of that into consideration, the importance of savings is paramount, as the pandemic has taught us that saving systematically, saving regularly is absolutely essential. And the savings habit should not go away. It should start early. And as I said, my the elder daughter just started work. The rule of thumb for her and for anybody who's investing is at least 20% of whatever you earn should be saved. It's as important as paying your rent. It's as important as eating your food. So it should be actually a line item in your budget, which is saying that this is one amount I'm saving. That number should not be below 20% ideally, and should keep growing. So saving is extremely important, and regular saving is as important, and remaining invested is equally important. I'll come and explain the difference between saving, investing, and investing with a purpose in a couple of minutes.
How much, if you had to give, it's a very ambiguous term, right? When you say save money, I think that makes it difficult as well for an individual to be like, okay, how should I save money? Because everyone will say that, listen, any which ways times are tough. My, income has been disrupted. My salary has been cut. I'm barely able to make ends meet. So how should I go about even saving my money? How would you quantify that? If there's a simple budget rule book that, okay, this is the amount of your income that you should save, what do you think that budget amount should be?
So the answer is in two parts, Mubina. First part is that our rule of thumb is 20%. So minimum 20% of your income, whatever it is, should be saved. You should manage your expenses. And people say I'm on the end, but maybe give up some of your wants, not your needs, but give up some of your wants. That extra holiday, that slightly bigger, fancier phone. So saving is critical. So the rule of thumb is 20%. And what are you saving for, right? And the reason you're able to get into this trap that, hey, I don't have money today and the income has been interrupted, is probably you didn't start early enough. So the first rule is that this is not the only time that there will be an emergency crisis, and hopefully nothing so bad ever in our lives. But there would be times when people lose their jobs, so there is an interruption in the income. So first and foremost, when you save money, invest, as I said, invest with a purpose. Create an emergency corpus. Make sure your health insurance is sufficiently topped up. Make sure your money kept aside for an emergency like losing a job or some other thing. 6 to 9 months of expenses have to be in an emergency corpus. It's an absolute ground rule, cannot be broken by anybody else. Then obviously you start investing for different reasons. You want to upgrade your mobile, your laptop for youngsters. You want to buy a house sometime later. You want to start planning for your children's education. You want to start planning for your longer lifetime goals like retirement. So they all have different needs and different purposes, but savings is at the heart of it, because unless you save, you can't invest. So yeah, I mean, if you've not done it till now, please start now. Please start now. God forbid, obviously, that you're materially impacted yourself and you had to eat into your emergency corpus, or you have borrowings, or you have an interruption to income. Then obviously you have to wait for this time to pass and manage with the minimum expenses. But balancing your expenses in such a manner, and I'm not saying that you have to have a balanced lifestyle. You need to balance. You don't need to live like a king and be a pauper, nor do you need to live like a pauper and become a king later. It's a balance of these two. So save at least 20%, and as your income grows every year, so increase your savings at least as much as your salary goes up. And if you can, put your bonuses aside, put any inheritance aside, invest it well. And increasingly, like as your wealth grows, so if you're 35 plus, you should be saving 30%. If you're 45 plus, you should be saving 40%. So that's essentially the rule of thumb.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very important point as well you raised. You don't have to be stingy, if we could call it that, and live like a pauper. You earn money, you work hard, so you can enjoy life a little bit. It's important to strive for that balance, but of course at the same time don't get too free with your money as well. You said something about the difference between saving and investing. So let's talk about that a little bit more. You use the two terms in a very distinct manner. So after I save my money, I manage to save a good chunk, a decent chunk of my income. What's the next step? Is not the entire amount to be put and invested?
Absolutely. So investing versus investing with a purpose. So I think a lot of people confuse investing with speculation. Right, so they want to buy some stock. They want to do, cryptocurrency is the flavor of the month, and sort of a lot of investing seems to be buying and selling stock, or buying and selling that kitna deti hai, where returns becomes the only reason you're investing, right? And I think that's a very bad way or bad approach to investing. It will lead to not optimal outcomes. It might give you short-term returns, but you will there's a fair chance that this huge increase in demand, which is phenomenally good for the country, that more people are investing, but I don't know if they're investing with a purpose, right? Because it all seems to be around returns. It all seems to be around short-term gains. Now, if you are investing with a purpose, it depends on the purpose. Like I said, first and foremost, create an emergency fund, which is 6 to 9 months of your expenses, which has got to be in liquid funds, so it's easily accessible. It's largely risk-proof. Keep it aside. Secondly, create a corpus for your one-time, slightly larger ticket expenses. So you've taken money aside for your operating expenses on a monthly basis, paying rental, eating food, little bit of travel, buying those clothes, but larger expenses, right? You might want to upgrade your laptop every 3 years. You might want to buy a bigger phone. You want to take that international holiday as you go up the value chain. Those you need to keep into slightly what I would call debt instruments, or the equivalent of that, right? So which are slightly ultra short or short-term duration debt funds. Then is the real money, right? The real money which will help you retire later, which is for your children's education, which is for you to retire peacefully. And as I keep repeating, and there are enough examples which show you, I'll just give you an anecdote. Somebody who's 25 years old and starts investing today, and somebody who's 35 years old and this person invests, say, 10,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees a year for the next 10 years, and then he stops. And the next person starts when they're 35, and they both don't touch the money till they're 60. They keep investing. The person who invested for the first 10 years, for whatever reason stopped, will have 3 times the money at a decent return of about 10 to 11% than the person who starts only at 35. So starting early and remaining invested with a purpose is really important. So investing is a lot more about sort of goal-driven, asset allocation-driven, risk appropriate, rather than just returns. So I want to differentiate money. Savings is just taking money away from your income and putting it aside. Then investing into the purpose is what we recommend at Scripbox very heavily.
All right. Okay, so investing essentially is usually done, in fact, almost always done with a clear goal, with a clear purpose in mind, and returns are really given maybe a secondary thought. You should really look at what you want to achieve with this money that you're putting aside and investing, and keep that fully in mind. So, the part where you mentioned that, okay, income minus expenses, and that's just the amount that you've managed to save. how do you go about parking that money as well? Because that very well could be your emergency fund as well. You mentioned that in the first answer. So what are the best, we'll delve a bit more into the investments bit as well, but what is the best asset class available or the instrument available to just park your money there?
I would say liquid funds.
I mean, I definitely would not want to consider a savings account, because today a savings account barely gives you 2.5–3%.
Again, I think I believe liquid funds are a very appropriate way to put that money. They are relatively low cost for the customer. They are liquid, as the name suggests. You can redeem the money overnight. They're not stuck. So if you want, say you put aside $1 lakh, right? That's probably, say, your 6 months of expenses, or you put aside 2 lakhs for an emergency corpus, and you need only 20,000 rupees out of it. You don't need to go and break a fixed deposit. You don't need to earn. So I think liquids give you visibility, it's easy to buy, it's easy to redeem. So in the emergency corpus, which is again part of your savings which you have kept aside, we would recommend that you put the money into liquid funds. And just to correct one thing, Mubina, that it's not income minus expenses equal to saving. It is income minus savings equal to expenses. So savings takes precedence in many cases. So make sure that you're saving that 20%, which I talked about, at least, if not more.
Okay, all right. Don't save what's left over. In fact, spend after you have saved. Basically, that's the difference that, that tweak in the equation makes. Okay, you mentioned investing with a purpose. Should the goal or the objective be just one of the things in mind that one should keep when choosing an investment instrument to put your money in?
No, you should definitely have what I call the jam jar concept. Different jam jars have different expenses, like having multiple piggy banks, one for your children's education, one for your holidays, one for your retirement, and all of them have different glide paths as to how money builds up and how money gets utilized. So if you're building up for, say, your children's education, and a large number of children, say, are going abroad now, and you're 35 years old, you've got a, say, 5-year-old, you really don't know. It's better to plan for that education. Education inflation is higher, ahead of normal inflation. There's a dollar-denominated inflation. So just building up to that corpus and then depleting it is very different from a retirement corpus. It's very different from buying a house, because there's a down payment. So it's different needs that you have, and I think having a good financial planner and a wealth advisor by your side is extremely important to manage this for you. It sounds easy in concept, but balancing all of these, making sure that you're not sort of confusing the issues is really important. Because, and the good part is, if you invest systematically and you invest regularly and you remain invested, all of these can be met. You might not buy the biggest house, you might not, but you will buy a house. You will be able to put your children through college. You will be able to retire peacefully, as long as you're very clear as to why you're investing. As Warren Buffett keeps saying, it's not timing the market, it's about time in the market. It's about time in the market, it's about time in the market.
Okay, very well put, Atul. So how do you look at the different investment instruments available today in the country? What is the suitability of some of the most commonly used investment instruments for different investors having different goals and time horizons as well to achieve those goals?
I think there are sufficient instruments available. Again, as I said, a good wealth manager or a good financial planner sitting alongside you will help you meet, and you don't need to find, without sounding very salesy, a platform like Scripbox, which digitizes the entire experience and makes it very, very simple and democratizes that entire wealth management, which is available only to HNIs, to even somebody investing 10, 15, 20,000, 50,000 rupees a month. The instruments are sufficient. So there are large cap funds, there are diversified funds, there are mid cap funds if you want to take slightly higher risk. There are liquid funds, like I said, for an emergency fund. There are ultra short, there are debt fund instruments, there are NPS, there is a fixed deposit. So creating a portfolio which is goal appropriate is the role of your wealth manager to work alongside with you. And a wealth manager doesn't need to be a person, it can be a platform. So there are sufficient instruments. Yes, there are very complex instruments which we don't understand, so we don't recommend. But on the face of it, given that there is international equity exposure, so even say you want to either do international equity directly because you understand it very well and you have the sufficient capital to make a play, or you can expose yourself to international fund equity through an international fund, mutual fund, right? So those are offered in the market. So I believe there are sufficient products are available, but there are horses for courses, like you said. So pick the right. At Scripbox, we see ourselves as a boatman, as a Maji, as they say in Hindi. We sit alongside you on your boat to take you to the other side. It could be turbulent waters, it could be placid waters. You might want to go faster at some time. But yeah, to be with you, along with you, and whether it is a motorboat or a ship or whatever, we are there with you to take you to the other side. You need that partner to understand your specific circumstances, to help you to use all of these products and all of these solutions in an integrated manner to give you the right outcomes.
Okay. All right. I think that gives us a good playbook to start off with when it comes to saving, investing, and I hope the concepts as well, the notions of these concepts is well understood in the minds of all of our viewers. We'll, of course, be putting this conversation up on YouTube as well for a ready reckoner, pardon me, for all our viewers. Atul, we leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us on The Money Show today.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, and I hope it was awesome. Bad. Thank you very much. Have a nice one.
Well, one of the reasons why you must invest is to save yourself also from the dreaded inflation monster. And if you think inflation won't touch you, well, take a look again. Vegetable oil prices have surged to an 11-year high. Here's a report on the rise in price seen in this household commodity and what the government is trying to do to curb the price rise.